welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I hope your week is off to a great start. Today, we are going to be unpacking this up-and-coming full moon in the sign of Aquarius. I have one word for you guys. It is electrifying. This is a huge full moon. If you guys don't already follow me, please do click the bell button below. That way you're alerted to when I have new videos on the channel. We're here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday, trying to make sense of what the heck is going on in the cosmos. Oh my goodness. I have to take a big deep breath before I look at this moon. Before I get into that, make sure you guys leave me a comment below. Let me know how you're feeling about this. Where is this taking place in your chart? And if this is a helpful video for you, please consider sharing it with someone else or giving me a thumbs up if you like the video. All right, so deep breaths. I've been looking at this full moon for a rather long time. I've been looking at it for a number of months because I knew that August was going to be a big month for a number of reasons. We've got a lot of things kind of going on with the planets that are either conjuncting or squaring off in the skies right now. So you're going to see that reflected in this full moon. It is very complex. All the aspects in this full moon are a lot. So I want to really take my time to dive deep and try to explain it to you guys. If you stay tuned to the end of this video, I will take you through the 12 rising signs where I will give you some helpful tips and what I think that you need to be watching out for during the full moon in Aquarius. All right, so this is going to be taking place on August 19th, 2024, and that'll be happening at various different times depending on where you live. If you're on Pacific time zone, it's going to be around 11:25 a.m. Central time will be 1:25 p.m. and Eastern time will be 2:25 p.m. But I have a bit of a spoiler for you guys. I do believe you're going to be feeling the effects of this pretty early on because there are some other things that are kind of happening right around the time of this full moon. So I anticipate the buildup is actually really going to be starting around the time that the moon is actually entering into Scorpio, just a couple of days prior. So the full moon will be on the 19th, but I think that we are feeling the effects of this right about here, August 12th. So the 12th through the 19th is when you're really going to start to kind of feel these energies build, because this is going to be the first quarter square. So you guys are going to start to see some of that crisis in action that's going to be playing out as we are making our way into what will eventually be the full moon in Aquarius. Now, this is going to take place at 27 degrees. So if you have any personal planets, let's say around 26, 27, 28 degrees of Aquarius, this is going to be a lot more prominent for you. That could be your sun, your rising, it could be an angle, your moon sign, or any personal planets that you have there. And it's definitely going to be very impactful also for the fixed signs. So if you are a Taurus, Leo, or Scorpio, especially if you're within those degrees, the 26 to 28 degrees, you're going to be feeling the crunch from the square. But also my mutable friends, you guys are going to be feeling this as well because we've got a pretty complex mutable T-square that's going to be happening in the skies at the time of this particular full moon. I was kind of sitting and thinking with this for a little bit and I was like, well, you know, because there are so many, I think, things that are opposing or squaring during the time of the full moon, what's the takeaway from this, right? Obviously, the world's been a little loud in the last week or so. There's been a lot of things that have been going on, and it does feel like this buildup of momentum that's heading somewhere. Well, this is a full moon in Aquarius, so Aquarius does deal with what's going on with all of us collectively, with groups, with friends, with politics. This can be big for parties. This can be big for big changes that can be happening for humanitarian things. So definitely groups of people, masses of people is kind of the theme when we see a full moon in Aquarius. I have not been able to take my eye off of the square to Uranus. I think that's probably, I'm not going to say the biggest, but definitely one of the big aspects of this particular full moon. And I'll kind of get into what that means. But when we have a full moon that is in a hard angle to the ruler, right, then we definitely know that there is going to be a bit of a kind of tug of war that's kind of going on in our lives. So the full moon's going to happen in Aquarius, so you can look at the house that it's taking place in. That's where you're going to see some of the action. But I want to remind you guys that there is definitely a number of curveballs coming. So get out your baseball mitts, get ready to catch those balls in the stands, because yeah, there is going to be something that is likely kind of coming out of left field that is going to be impacting and creating kind of bigger waves in the Aquarius area of your chart. So we'll break that down in just a second. But when I sat with this and I looked at it, I was like, well, what's the theme, right? Uranus is in Taurus. Obviously, Uranus is a sign that's about unexpected, unpredictable, electrifying, shocking, sudden changes. Change is the name of the game when we have a full moon like this. But what I kind of came to is that, essentially, like, gems cannot get polished without friction. I think that's like the message that I kind of got. And I was like, oh, there's some truth to that. So appropriate, considering Taurus is an earth sign. It does rule things like gemstones and what is precious and tangible, things that we collect. So you guys are going to feel the pressure, and the lesson, I think, in all of this is to kind of roll with the punches and recognize that this full moon, may be full of, difficulty, but within that difficulty, there's opportunity. You just have to be willing to take those opportunities. You have to be willing to take those chances as they come. So try to kind of keep a silver lining perspective when this full moon hits. All right. So we've got the full moon that's going to be at 27 degrees. All right. So I'd like to read to you guys the Sabian symbol. If you guys are new to my channel, I like to use tarot as well as degree astrology. Even though I'm a Western astrologer, I like to incorporate other things like these practices to kind of better make sense of what's happening and give us a little bit more context. 27 deals with Gemini. So this is a Gemini degree if you follow degree theory. So it can deal with Gemini things, okay? Aquarius is connected to the internet, so I'm wondering if this is going to be more kind of things erupting, revolving around people discussing things on the internet, some kind of information that's kind of coming out that's like shocking or surprising. Some of these things are already happening this week. There's been definitely a lot that's going on in regards to internet censorship and influence when it comes to search optimization or, chat GPT or, what is and is not popping up and how that actually influences elections. So there's lots of stuff like that going on. I'm not going to get into it because I don't want to upset anybody, but definitely worth looking into because there's been a number of cases that have involved Google that I think is very pertinent to this particular full moon, but there's still more that's going to come. So we'll see. So 27 degrees deals with doubles. Things can come in pairs. It can be about brothers and sisters and siblings. It could represent splits of situations. It could also represent, making decisions revolving around early education. Obviously, emails, communication, text messages, phone calls. These are other things that are kind of connected to Gemini. All right. So when we have a full moon, we have the moon in opposition to the sun. It happens every 28 days. We are actually building off of a new moon that we saw back in February of this year. And I'm gonna show it to you guys in just a second. So let me read to you the Sabian symbols first. As always with the Sabian symbols, we round up to the next degree. So I'm gonna read to you guys 28 degrees of Aquarius to get a little bit more context to see what this represents, and it could not be more fitting. All right, so Aquarius 28, a tree felled and sawed. The keyword is immediacy. The theme is doing what needs to be done. All right, the symbol speaks to foresight, preparation, the ability to quickly grasp what needs to be done in crisis and do it. The image of a tree felled and sawed symbolizes practicality and sacrifice for the lesser for the good of the greater. The emphasis here is on common sense, initiative, and the wisdom of not waiting until the last minute to get things done. At its highest, it represents industriousness, efficiency, or the type of individual who is prepared for any unforeseen emergency or event. Watch for lack of imagination and creativity and a tendency to do things the hard way. The accent is on being practical. You may find it necessary to sacrifice or use up one thing in order to create something better or fill a higher need. Your opportunity lies in using your common sense. Look for ways to create what you need from other things that you do not need. Guard against being short-sighted or overconfident about the availability of resources. Try not to get caught unprepared for an emergency. Plan ahead. Stepping stones are practicality functionalism, resourcefulness, skillfulness, constructiveness, fundamentalism, realism, productiveness, and sensibility. Well, I think that kind of speaks for itself. You know, when I kind of dig a little bit deeper, I think that beyond just the kind of ominous warning that comes with that particular Sabian symbol, I think about this representing a period of introspection and self-analysis. It could be a time when you're examining your life and identifying parts that no longer serve you and taking steps to change or remove them. And while this process can be challenging, it will involve letting go of the familiar and stepping into the unknown. I think it's necessary to be able to take these steps during the time of this full moon for growth and renewal. So just as an example, you know, maybe you're somebody who's in a long-term relationship and it has felt stagnant, kind of unfulfilling, right? So like the felling and the sawing of the tree could symbolize the end of the relationship, while sawing the wood could represent the process of healing and self-discovery that can follow. Throughout this process, you know, you may learn more about yourself and what you truly need in a relationship, setting the stage for a more fulfilling partnership in the future, right? If this is impacting you more in a professional way, it could represent a time of restructuring or downsizing a company. The felling of the tree could symbolize a loss of certain departments or positions, while the sawing of the wood could represent a process of reorganizing and streamlining operations. Although this is difficult, nobody wants to make these decisions if they're, you know, an owner or if they're a boss. It can increase efficiency and sustainability in the long run. So definitely sacrifices are a theme. That does not surprise me, as Saturn is the co-ruler of Aquarius, and we see some particularly challenging Saturn aspects as well. But can we talk about the fact that it's basically saying be prepared? I mean, quite literally, be prepared in the chance of an emergency. When I think of Uranus, I think of things that are electric. I think of, you know, stuff that can kind of overheat or explode. That can be happening as well, as we're seeing Mars and Jupiter kind of in conjunction to one another. You know, Taurus represents physical goods, food, hard assets. It could be, you know, different forms of currency. If you're into like metals and stuff, it could represent having the bare, you know, kind of necessities, or having something extra that you're kind of stashing away just in case. Not an extremist, not an alarmist on this channel, but I've been telling you guys this for a very long time, that when we start seeing some of these hard angles to Uranus, we will see some issues revolving around banking and exchanges, and, you know, getting money on and off of exchanges, or dealing with, you know, banks that are kind of shutting down, or onboarding that becomes difficult for certain platforms. And we have started to see that in this last week. So we're already starting to see the stress that's kind of happening when it comes to the financial institutions. A lot of that has been as a result of Mercury and its pre-shadow at the end of July coming into a square with Uranus. So you guys want to think back to what happened around July 21st, when we had a full moon in Capricorn. Different full moon, but very similar square. And there was something very critical about communication that was shocking and surprising. We all kind of know the events that have been taking place since the end of July. So this is going to feature the second of what will be 3 Mercury square Uranus. Okay, so Mercury is systems. It can be about machines. It can be about transactions. You know, the first one kind of really highlighted that big outage that we saw across the board that was dealing with like Windows and CrowdStrike. And so seeing another full moon with a similar aspect does make me feel inclined to tell you guys I see some of the same stuff that I think is going to be happening again. So it may kind of feel like a bit of like a deja vu moment. That's going to also be kind of happening right around the time that we have a Cazimi. So there's definitely going to be some kind of shocking information that's going to be kind of coming up. To better understand the purpose of this full moon in Aquarius, I want to show you guys what was actually seeded 6 months ago when we had the new moon in Aquarius. And I have to go back and like watch my video and see exactly what I said, but I'm fairly confident that I touched on the themes of 20 degrees. Okay, so this was February 9th, 2024. So 6 months ago, we had a new moon in Aquarius. We had that massive stellium of planets that was moving through Aquarius in February. I think it was all kind of happening around the 14th or the 15th. But this is the new moon that seeded the full moon that we're going to be having in just a few short weeks. And that new moon was at 20 degrees. And 20 degrees deals with Scorpio. So it's about endings and beginnings, kind of one thing ending so something else can be reborn. This same new moon, was in a square to Uranus. So it had the same kind of hard angle to Uranus that was saying that kind of collectively we all needed to kind of start focusing on, unification and working as a team and creating new networks or kind of like parallel economies or like parallel ways of being able to kind of connect with other people. I feel like that's happened. We've seen a lot of like diversification in social media. We've also seen a lot of diversification when it comes to community like networks and people who are kind of coming together. And obviously all this Aquarius energy is just huge shifts for mankind. It's huge shifts for, where we're going in the future and what our goals and what our dreams are, because that's what Aquarius kind of represents. It was also a time where we saw Saturn that was in some really nice aspect actually to Jupiter. And I remember telling you guys at the beginning of the year that, a lot of this was about having a vision for where you saw your life going and what it is that you wanted to be building and like having faith in what you were kind of working on. So now 6 months later, this becomes a full moon. And we see that the full moon is going to be in hard aspect to Uranus. So, I really feel like the proof was in that particular new moon, that this was going to be a really interesting 6 month period that was really going to be applying a lot of pressure and getting us to change and getting us to evolve when it comes to our resources, our spending habits, when it comes to our personal values, what we possess, what we own. It has certainly brought a lot of destabilization to the financial markets and the financial system as well. And we've definitely seen a real uptick in people talking about diversification of assets. So this last week has just been a hot mess in the stock market. Like, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not even somebody who specializes in trading by any means. But I remember looking at this full moon and being like, yeah, that's when everything is really going to start to kind of pop with the stock market. So I will show you guys the stock market chart, and I will show you guys the United States chart, because this full moon is triggering some very potent degrees within those two charts. And I think that's why we're seeing things kind of hitting a boiling point. Anyway, so, this full moon basically in the sign of Aquarius is really creating this dynamic, energetic atmosphere because of the aspects to Uranus. So the moon in Aquarius is encouraging independence, innovation, intellectual pursuits, while the sun is creativity, self-expression, and leadership. Leo is the individual. So it's more about, what do I love? What am I creating? What's going to bring me happiness? What's going to bring me joy? What risks am I taking? And this represents like the person who's on stage, the performer, right? And Aquarius is more the audience. It is everybody who's watching. It is everybody as a collective rather than individually. So with this full moon, we really feel the polarity between, who am I in the sea of other people, right? What am I doing compared to what everybody else is doing? So naturally, we can feel that there is a bit of tension in trying to kind of figure out, like, who are we, in the midst of everything that's kind of going on. So it can be hard sometimes to differentiate, ourselves from our friends or our networks or, what other people or society kind of expect of us. I think the theme of this full moon, obviously, is change. It's going to be about progress. It's going to be a lot about humanitarian efforts. It can bring a sense of detachment and objectivity because the moon is in Aquarius and it's in an air sign. So it can allow us as individuals to view situations from a broader perspective and make informed decisions, right? That's the beauty of the moon in Aquarius, is that it's going to sometimes know when to go its own way. And it also is able to, I think, kind of, because of that Saturn Uranus energy of Aquarius, it can detach itself. I think that, the full moon in general is about breaking free from old patterns and embracing new ideas and working towards creating a more inclusive society. But that's going to take people on a personal level kind of rising up and really kind of tapping into their inner kind of like leader, When you have a full moon like this, I think it's significant for the collective because it is in the last decan of the sign. So, 27 degrees is the final kind of degrees of Aquarius. So this is going to be impacting a lot of people globally. It could be global communications. It could be global conversations, global ideas. And a lot of it is going to be very kind of communication or telecommunications based. Now, I think when I look at some of the squares with Uranus, like I said, it's going to bring unexpected changes. It's going to bring disruptions. And Uranus ultimately wants to liberate. That's the whole focus. And so in the sign of Taurus, it's about liberating us in areas of finance, value, and security. Now, a full moon like this can also indicate that this is a time of rebellion against establishment norms and a desire for freedom and independence against or from, I guess I should say, financial systems. It does provide us with opportunities for sudden insights and breakthroughs in areas related to technology and anything that is going to be kind of connected to Taurus. It could be farming, it could be banking, it could be resources, it's the earth. This is a lot of pressure between the sun and the moon and the earth. So we could also see that there could be some rocks, rattles, and rolls that can kind of come from this. So we may see more things like extreme weather, which I think we'll see for other reasons. Volcanic eruptions, we can see earthquakes, things like that that can kind of be coming from that particular square. Now, when we break down the aspects, and this is where things can get a little hairy, so I'm going to take it one at a time. And I want to focus first on Uranus because that is the modern day ruler of Aquarius. So if we look at Uranus, it is at 27 degrees. So it is pretty darn close to being an exact square between the sun and the moon, just a few minutes off here. So that's about as close as you get in a T-square, and that's going to make Uranus essentially like the focal point. Basically, Taurus is ruled by Venus, right? And Venus is about relationships, it's about money, it's about pleasure, security, and stability. So these topics can kind of get rocked and rolled a little bit, or there can be some changes or kind of upgrades that are being made suddenly in these things, which could really propel the emotional intensity of this particular full moon and make it a lot bigger. Now, when you have a fixed T-square, I've used this term before, but you have an opposition. So oppositions are 180 degrees. That's what we always see with the full moon. So that is saying we're trying to integrate two separate areas of our life, and we're kind of seeing the fruits of our labor basically from the last 6 months. So you have an opposition, and then you have a square. And it's kind of like you're driving and then you get T-boned and you don't see something kind of coming out of nowhere. So that's why Uranus is quite destabilizing or kind of shocking when it's in this particular angle. Now, a fixed square basically means that you've got all of these planets in fixed signs. Fixed signs, essentially, they want to keep doing things the way that they do it. The way that they express their energy is hard work, determination, and grit. They put their nose to the grindstone. They keep getting the job done. So the sun in Leo, obviously in its domicile, it knows how to be bold and courageous and creative, and it's willing to take chances. And the moon in Aquarius is a little bit kind of more detached, and it's a little bit more rational. It can be a little bit more logical. And so this square to Uranus means that we're going to kind of feel like there are circumstances or situations or feelings that have us going in different directions. It's like, do I roll the dice and take a chance, or do I take a step back and be a little bit kind of, detached from any particular outcome, right? I would encourage everybody to be detached from any particular outcome, because very likely with the square to Uranus, it may not necessarily go the way that we think it's going to go. Now we take this a step further, right? So the sun and the moon obviously, represent the subconscious and the conscious. So this could be our ideas and what we're communicating and what we're doing and what we're saying versus how we really feel. And like, are those two things actually conflicting with each other with that opposition? And then we've got the moon square Uranus. So there is situations that are kind of suddenly changing that can, destabilize our emotions and make us feel different or make us feel a certain way or be willing to kind of change our emotions or change our mind. And the same thing with the sun and Mercury square Uranus. It means that, because of what's suddenly happening, we're having to get creative, remember the Sabian symbol, and kind of make do or figure out how to make something work or figure out how to kind of swing it and keep an open mind. Very complex astrology. All of these things are a little stressful, to say the least. Squares to Uranus do kind of represent where something can be breaking down or something can be suddenly changing, and like that's going to have a bigger effect essentially on some of the planets that are kind of moving into the square. So with this fixed T-square, Mercury's involved as well. Okay, and like just the day prior, we're going to see that Cazimi was kind of setting up. Actually, I mean, even earlier in the day, I'll look at the Cazimi in a second, but that's another piece of the pie. When we look at the fixed square involving the Sun and Mercury in Leo in opposition to the Moon and squaring Uranus, there's a lot going on. Essentially, like I said, these are fixed signs. So when Uranus is in Taurus, this is about changes and disruptions to the material world, may feel very intense and very focused. It can indicate a need for liberation from traditional structures and values in order to break free from the status quo. This could be something as simple as, I'm not shopping at that store, I'm switching banks, I'm changing my investment strategy, I'm no longer eating this, I'm no longer buying this, or I don't resonate with this anymore. It's no longer a value to me. When we see the T-square, it's creating the tension. So essentially, like, these signs, they all want to do something a certain way. They want stability and they're very determined to get that. So they're not going to be really flexible when it comes to making some of these changes. Now, the challenge of a T-square is to find the balance between the creative and expressive qualities of Leo and also the intellectual detached qualities of Aquarius and the disruptive yet liberating qualities of Uranus and Taurus. I see this as a moment of personal growth and learning to navigate the tension between our creative needs, our intellectual pursuits, and our desire for liberation. But it also suggests a need to balance, our self-expression and our leadership, and really kind of figuring out what it is that we need when it comes to either freedom or independence. So yeah, it's a bit of a mutable. Excuse me. We'll see the mutable mess in a second. A fixed T-square. So when I look at the fixed T-square, I feel like that really got me thinking. I was like, is there any way through this? Right? Like, is there a way through this without there being like too much chaos? And I was thinking of like one of my favorite Alan Watts quotes. I know you guys have probably heard me talk about him a couple of times, but Alan Watts said that the only way to make sense of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance. Okay. And like, I was like, this is so appropriate for this particular T-square, because I really don't feel like there's any avoiding some of the shakeups that's going to be coming with the Uranus square. Now, if we look at the traditional ruler of Aquarius, that would be Saturn. And Saturn is in Pisces still. Nothing's changed in that department. Saturn is still retrograde, so we're still reevaluating and reworking our visions, our beliefs. Maybe we're afraid to make change, and now Saturn is retrograde, so we're kind of thinking like, does it make sense to kind of review what I've been holding back or what I've been running away from or what I've been afraid to kind of look at? Reviewing structure and stability and like where there is lack of something. I think that's been a huge theme, especially in the sign of Pisces, is the belief that, we are protected or that we're safe or that there is some kind of security or that there is something that is kind of like holding us, And this realization, more like an emperor has no clothes moment, that we have to believe in ourselves. We have to reimagine, a new world for ourselves. And we're going to see more of that when Saturn kind of goes into Aries next year. So this is the same day, basically, that we are seeing the Jupiter-Saturn square. Okay, so that off the bat is kind of like, ooh. And you guys caught that video, I'm sure. I talk about how Saturn wants us to be patient and determined and have a vision and have a plan, and wants to make sure that we are emotionally kind of doing the necessary work before making any moves. I use the phrase, Saturn's kind of tying a lasso around Jupiter, being like, no, you can't go too far yet. Don't expand too quickly. It does kind of squash any positive expectations. It does make it more difficult to be optimistic with Jupiter in Gemini. We've seen it manifest pretty much how I said, that we were going to see a market breakdown in August, and that we were also going to see some pretty gnarly job numbers. And so unfortunately those things are happening, but that's pretty much expected with a Jupiter-Saturn square and with Jupiter in Gemini. So I feel like some of the news or information that's coming out revolving around the time of the full moon and the shocks and surprises and the financial implications that may come from this may be directly correlated to the Saturn-Jupiter square. the irony that, you know, we're in Leo season and we got a bunch of planets in Leo, and we've got Saturn at 17 degrees, which is a Leo degree, squaring Jupiter at 17 degrees, which is a Leo degree. I feel like, you know, this is really kind of touching on more of the censorship stuff. You know, Mars and Jupiter in Gemini, unfortunately, we've seen in parts of the world, especially the UK over the last week or two, that there's been lots of like riots and things that are going on, lots of conflict obviously happening over there. And I think a lot of that is just disruption in the neighborhood. You know, Jupiter and Mars can quite literally be people running around, you know, kind of like wielding weapons or, you know, knives and things. It's quite literal. And the squares to Saturn, and Saturn is retrograde, can represent leadership hiding, lack of support from police, lack of support from military, and also, you know, dealing with issues revolving around like foreigners, or dealing with issues revolving around kind of culture wars, race wars, religious wars. These are all Mars, Jupiter, square Saturn. You know, Mars is about conflict, combat, and war. Jupiter can be about beliefs, but it can also be about laws. And the square to Saturn can represent the lack of appropriate support, the lack of I think oversight when it comes to these situations. But Saturn also works against Jupiter and Mars. Saturn also says, you know, you won't be able to travel if this continues, or we're going to, you know, consider certain situations where there could potentially be, you know, martial law or lockdowns in certain areas, or we're going to limit people from being able to travel or get on subways or other things. And also, I think it's going to be censorship issues that's going to be directly connecting to trying to better kind of manage what's going on with some of the conflict. Now, it's not limited to that part of the world. I think a lot of this might be news revolving around censorship and stuff that's kind of coming out, unfortunately, but it needs to come out. And this might be a moment where a lot of people are going to have really big reactions and responses to some of this news. Now, you know, I think that, let's see, what else do I have here? Okay, so let's move to the mutable T-square, because there is one here. It's not just, you know, Jupiter and Mars square Saturn. And like, yes, Jupiter and Mars, especially with the North Node being ruled by Mars, can be optimistic and anything's positive. And, you know, we just got to keep moving. We just got to keep chugging. But like Saturn in the background is saying, you have to do that work first. You have to look at where Pisces is in your chart. You have to do that work first before you're able to quickly travel, proceed, you know, make some kind of plans, make some kind of move. And then on the other side of this, we have a Venus transit. So Venus is in opposition to Saturn. Okay, it's a little less than a degree. So Saturn is in Virgo at 18 degrees. Excuse me, Venus is in Virgo at 18 degrees, and it's in opposition to Saturn. And we have yet another T-square. Venus square Mars and Jupiter, opposed Saturn. So we don't really get a break with this full moon, basically, is what I'm getting at. Any which way you slice it, there's a huge focus and a huge emphasis on Uranus, Jupiter, and Mars, both ways. And obviously, the T-square works very much the same. I will say that I feel like mutable squares do better than the fixed squares, because the fixed squares, they don't want to change. Mutable squares, because mutable signs are willing to be flexible, they're interchangeable, they're, you know, here to kind of help us change seasons and adapt to new situations. It can be about wrapping things up. So when we look at that particular square, I feel like with Mars and Jupiter being the focal point of the Saturn, you know, Venus T-square, this is about speaking up. This is about being brave. This is about organizing and working with your community. It does somewhat trine the moon in Aquarius. And this is about working together with groups for a common cause. This is not about going out and fighting and rioting and attacking people and being a part of the angry mob. There's going to be a lot of that. Stay out of that. This is about learning how to communicate and work with other people and speak out against tyranny. If there is ever a really good time to try to be an independent journalist, it's probably going to be the middle of August. If you are wanting to go and stream live somewhere, if you're wanting to get on Twitter and start talking about what's happening in your community, if you're ever wanting to try to, you know, publish or share something that's kind of happening in your part of the world, I recommend doing it. because the only way out of this particular square is about being brave, right? The North Node's in Aries, speaking up, taking action, you know, going and being on the scene, writing things, blogging things, streaming things, sharing things, and showing what's going on. And a lot of this can also be about talking to other people and trying to motivate other people to practice critical thinking, to not just throw up their arms in the air and like go buck wild, because we're going to see people that are going to do that. This is about being strategic, and this is also about knowing that in a lot of ways, some of the chaos that I think is being orchestrated and will continue to be orchestrated is intentional. And it's intentional because it's being set up to essentially disrupt communications, create issues with connection with social media, and make it more challenging and difficult for people to be able to come together and further kind of push this agenda to have a complete technical totalitarian takeover. And I know I sound crazy, but I'm just telling you guys, this is some of the stuff that I'm kind of feeling as I look at this, right? It may not sound so crazy in a couple of weeks when we see ultimately what comes from this particular period. But speak up and be brave, right? You don't have to fight with your hands. You shouldn't be having conflict and combat with other people. Do it with your minds, do it with communication. And it's not about trying to speak sense into other people, because not everybody is going to listen. But it's about trying to be smart and recognizing and seeing the patterns with what's kind of going on out in the world, and that there is a series of events that have been taking place that's to kind of set up and create the chaos to be able to bring in the solution. And to me, it looks like the solution is definitely going to be more censorship, and it's going to be more issues. And this full moon is the moment where I think people are being asked to stand up and actually, you know, speak out for themselves, even if it means it's going against the narrative or going against the crowd. Mutable T-squares, obviously this is about, you know, changes that are going to be happening. So this is about trying to encourage you to be flexible in what may feel like a moment where you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. When we look at, you know, Saturn and Pisces, it's limitation or responsibility in the realm of spirituality, dreams, and imagination. But it can also indicate a need to set boundaries in relationships or take a more realistic approach to one's ideals. Now, Venus in Virgo, on the other hand, it has this desire for practical love and relationships, and there's an emphasis on service and on health and daily routines. Venus in Virgo is also, you know, about precision and perfection when it comes to love and beauty. But Venus also deals with health in this sign. So Venus going through, you know, a sign where she's debilitated, she's moving through a sign that deals with illness and accidents, is in opposition to Saturn. So this could represent issues with healthcare workers. It could be foreshadowing some health-related events. And the opposition to Saturn could represent lack of support, lack of leadership. It could also represent issues revolving around pharmaceuticals, shortages when it comes to medication or health aid. And then we look at Jupiter and Mars in Gemini, which is very intellectually curious. This is also about communication and a desire for adventure and exploration. And so with this combination, we can feel a little restless and impatient, right? So all of these are coming into tension with the T-square with one another. And essentially, it just basically means that, you know, this is going to be a challenge where we're being asked to find a balance between emotional and material needs, represented by Saturn and Pisces and Venus in Virgo, and the intellectual and communicative needs by Jupiter and Mars in Gemini. Now, the T-square is all about growing and learning. So this is about navigating and finding this balance between emotional and intellectual. And also, I think this is about a desire for perfection and service with the need for adventure and exploration. Quite literally, the third house or Gemini is about traveling. It could be traveling by bus, by train, by car, public transit. It could be subways. And as we start to see this Venus-Saturn opposition, I'm wondering if there is going to be some issues with workers, if there's going to be issues with transportation schedules, if we're going to see issues that could be kind of coming up health related, that's like impacting and creating issues getting around in our local communities. These are also mutable signs, so this could also be connecting to weather events. We see a lot of intense weather things happen when we see mutable squares. Just this last week, I saw the flooding that was happening in Spain in some of the subways. I know we still have some gnarly storms that are coming up through the Gulf in this next week or two here in the United States. So I could see how it could be about health-related things impacting people's ability to be able to kind of come and go, or weather-related things that are impacting our ability to kind of come and go. So that's like another interpretation that I have. Now, the full moon is on the heels of a cazimi, right? You're like, and what else? It's on the heels of a cazimi. So the cazimi in itself is positive, especially I like the sun being in its own domicile. So if we scale back a little bit, we see the cazimi that's actually happening on the 18th. So this is just the day before. And this is the midway point in the Mercury retrograde cycle. Mercury's been retrograding from Virgo. It's going to go back into Leo from about 4 degrees of Virgo to 21 degrees of Leo. So if you don't know what the Mercury retrograde is about, or you're not sure what the purpose is, or maybe you've lost something and you're waiting for it to kind of pop up, or maybe this is when somebody kind of calls you back or you find something that's been missing, generally that kind of happens around the midway point with the cazimi. Mercury retrograde conjunct the sun is a moment of enlightenment. It's about an epiphany or an awareness or an idea. So I love that it's in Leo because it's very personal. It's very, well, what do I think, right? What do I love? I'm going to start talking about what I love, or I'm going to start talking about how I'm going to be, taking the kind of the lead role in my own life. Very creative, very dynamic, very romantic, and it's very bold. And that's what I like about that particular conjunction. However, we know that, the Mercury retrograde is peppered with a few squares to Uranus. So we do see some stress revolving around speaking out, saying what's on our mind, saying what's on our heart, right? Leo is very kind of soulful. And the potential, financial implications for some people for speaking out and kind of saying what they think and what's on their mind, and how that impacts, maybe who they're banking with. I've seen some people who have gotten debanked, maybe who they're doing business with, and they're afraid that, maybe they're an actor or a creator or performer, maybe they're a YouTuber, and they're afraid that if they say certain things on their platform that it's going to impact them in terms of their financial resources. This is a real thing. But I wonder with the cazimi if it's going to be people kind of having that change of heart, change of mind, and kind of realizing like, I just got to say what I got to say. I think this is why we have seen such a shift recently in people being a little bit more vocal, especially when it comes to how they look at, their values or what they're investing in or what they're buying in the stock market. Stock market is Leo. So people are going to be a lot more kind of like bold about being like, this is what's most important, or this is what I think is like most valuable. And I'm not saying that their advice is necessarily true, but it may be true to them, right? That Sun Mercury is very kind of self-focused. Anyway, so when we see the, full moon, it is in opposition to Mercury. So it almost seems like somewhere around the 18th, there is this aha moment. It's like, I know what I need to do. I know exactly what I need to start doing. And the Mercury retrograde has been about, quite literally from Virgo to Leo, making the time to do the things that we love. Making the time to go back to dance class, hang out with, and spend time with our kids more, kind of scale back on work, make time for dating, making time for a hobby. That's quite literally what it is. And I saw a quote that I reposted on Twitter the other day that said like, you need to kind of start focusing on how to kind of like make your own way and kind of build something yourself. Otherwise, you're always going to end up working for, people, and you're going to do it for them, right? And that was such a perfect kind of example of like the Mercury retrograde in Virgo, because, Mercury in Virgo is about fixing, assessing, working on things. Like it's about servitude and helping other people. Certainly, it's probably been a hot mess for a lot of IT people out there, and you guys have probably been very busy, so good for you. But just generally zooming out and looking at that, I think this is a lot of people kind of going, I'm breaking my back working for a company that would replace me in a second. And a lot of people reevaluating how much time they're dedicating to their job, or, what they're doing professionally, and the impact maybe that it's having on their physical health, their mental health, their routine, their dietary habits. And also realizing that they're working towards something where they're like, well, what am I getting out of it at the end of the day? What kind of a life am I living? So the retrograde back into Leo has really kind of represented what else could I be doing that's going to bring more joy or bring me more independence. Leo, 5th house is about self-employed. So I think for some people, they're contemplating, well, do I want to, shift to being a contractor, or do I want to, finally put my store on Etsy, or, take my side hustle and, try to make it like a full-time thing? Am I willing to take that chance? And I think that for some people, that's what they're evaluating. They're asking themselves, is it worth the risk? Moving from, a guaranteed paycheck or having something that's a 9 to 5 and then shifting into something that could be more creative. And certainly there's a huge risk with that involved. But I think with this retrograde Mercury square Uranus, there could be big risk, big reward. And I think a lot of us are going to see that this is a full moon that's really about, pushing us for change. While the Cassimi is great, we have that epiphany, then the full moon comes in, and then the full moon is basically going to be saying what you think, what you have to say, what you believe, maybe even what's best for you, may not necessarily resonate with the collective. You may have a best friend that says, I don't agree with that. Or you may have a shocking or surprising interaction with somebody on Facebook, and you can't believe that somebody who you went to high school with is like posting about something, and you're like, oh my God, I don't agree with that. And you unfriend them, The square to Uranus can bring some pretty shocking results. And I think a lot of people are going to be up in arms over what's going on with finances, or, what's going on economically, and what's going to be going on with politics. And I think you're going to see a lot of people that are going to drive a hard line because of what they think. And ultimately, it's going to come down to their values, right? And this is why we're seeing more people, I think, more outspoken about, who they're supporting politically, regardless of who it is. People are going to become a little bit louder, I think, in that department, because that Sun Mercury it wants to be heard. It's like running around with like a megaphone, But Mercury, like I said, it will be in opposition to the moon. And so this can be a little difficult because this is bringing tension between your emotional needs and your rational thinking. So we can have a tendency during a full moon to kind of fly off the handlebars anyway, right? Emotions are high. It squares Uranus. So a lot of people are going to be kind of reacting to some kind of sudden change. But the opposition is also a tug of war. So the moon opposition to Mercury, I think, is making it difficult to make decisions or express our feelings. And during this time, we might feel challenged, by our need for independence and freedom, Aquarius moon, and our desire for attention and recognition, Leo. And we may struggle to reconcile our logical or analytical Mercury side of our emotional, intuitive side, moon. So the opposition, it does bring insights. It can bring breakthroughs, especially in areas relating to technology or innovation or social causes. But it can lead to misunderstandings and disagreements with others, especially if you find it difficult to communicate your feelings and that your needs are not being met. So to navigate this opposition and the complexity of it, it's just really about finding balance. All of this is about finding balance between your emotional needs and rational thinking. And so I think for a lot of us, it's about taking a step back, reflecting on our feelings, and considering the perspective of other people before we speak. I think it's also about finding the middle ground when it comes to expressing our feelings in a clear, rational way. Jupiter and Mars and Gemini, it also just wants to blurt things out. It wants to make the angry posts. It wants to snap back sometimes. It wants to say, get out of my way, when you're driving to work or when you're in the kitchen with your family. But I think the beauty of Saturn and Saturn retrograde is learning to observe. And I think I said this on another video recently, but the key here in navigating these energies is observing. Right? You guys can watch the whole circus and everything kind of go on, but observe. And then take it all in and then ask yourself, what am I going to do about it? And it may be a different path than, what other people in your life are taking. And it may feel kind of scary to kind of speak out or to kind of share your thoughts or your ideas or your opinions. But the beauty is that within these difficult aspects, this particular full moon, it does trine Chiron. There is some healing in the process of being able to speak up for yourself, share your ideas, share your creative talents, tell somebody how you feel. And it can be really healing, and it can be very therapeutic to just be raw and kind of, unapologetically yourself. We also see that this is going to be kind of slightly sextiling Mars and Jupiter, but Mars more so. Which means if we are bold, if we are brave, if we are, really feeling like it's time to sit down and write our book or plan a trip, or it's time to, be able to kind of move forward in some area, the only person that's stopping you from doing that is you. You're the only person who can get in your own way. So working with a sextile to Jupiter can bring opportunities for growth, for education, for good fortune and abundance. And the sextiles to Mars is going to help you feel, inspired, driven. It's going to give you some kind of energy, some kind of power. And we see sextiles that are also taking place slightly to the south node, which is also kind of karmically clearing. We see lots of drama when we see planets in the axis of Aquarius and Leo, because this is ruled by the sun. So it's not unusual to see lots of things going on with, romantic partners that are reshuffling, or we might notice that, we've got a little bit more kind of going on in our love lives, or there's more going on with the lives of, children or younger people in our lives, because these are things that Leo rules, obviously. But the Venus-Saturn opposition is another one. Venus is going to be sitting at 18 degrees. And to have Venus in Virgo and have Venus at 18 degrees is a degree that is going to deal with health-related matters. It's just going to be a thing. Venus in opposition to Saturn could mean that what we need, what we're reaching for, that support that we're hoping to get, it's hard to find. And that could be financially, that could be physically, that could be emotionally. And I will touch on the Venus-Saturn opposition for you guys so that way you really understand what's kind of going on in your chart. Venus slightly trines Uranus, so that is also an indication that there's change on the horizon, both with relationships as well as health and finances. We'll see that trine kind of happen after the full moon, obviously. And let's see, are there any other aspects that I'm missing? Not really. I think that's pretty much it. So I want to show you guys a couple other charts really quickly, and then I'll take you through the 12 rising signs. So let me show you. I want to show you the stock market chart for those of you guys who are interested. Okay, so this is the New York Stock Exchange. May 17th, 1792, 10:10 a.m. in New York. So if you look at this chart, guys, you've got Mercury and Uranus at the top part of the chart in Taurus, and this is a Leo rising. So this 27 degrees is what's getting nailed right now. Uranus is conjunct the stock market sun, and the sun is the chart ruler, so Leo rising. So if we look at this, here is the full moon on the 19th at 27 degrees. It's going to be in the stock market's 7th house, which could deal with the marketplace, right? So it's about the exchange, the place where the exchange is done. It could also be the relationship with people, in the stock market. We've got the full moon that's going to square Uranus, that is in conjunction to the stock exchange sun. And we haven't even had the full moon yet. Right? I don't think, personally, after looking at this chart, I don't think we've seen the bottom yet. That's just me. We'll see. But this particular full moon, in conjunction to Pluto, which brings meltdowns, and it brings drama, and it brings some kind of emotional chaos. The moon rules the 12th house. A lot of you guys probably don't know, but like in Japan and all kinds of things that are going on with the market there, it's all melting down, and we're starting to see a trickle effect here. It's also connected to bonds and other things, but the full moon conjunct Pluto makes me wonder if there is more economic tension and things going on in foreign countries, which leads to some kind of dramatic turn of events with the stock market. Then we also see simultaneously that the cazimi is happening right on the ascendant, bringing the attention to what's going on with the market itself. And Mercury rules the 2nd house. Now, some people may speculate, well, it could rebound. We could see a rally with Mercury coming into conjunction with the sun, this reworking or rewiring of something in regards to the markets. But I personally don't think so, especially with the squares to Uranus, because I feel like this is going to be a lot of people who are going to be like, do I want to get out completely, or people who got burned. And a lot of this could be about technical glitches because it's at 27. So when we see Uranus and Mercury in a square, I'm wondering, are we going to see more issues with trades? We saw a bunch of, basically all the main kind of financial trading platforms just yesterday, temporarily were shut down, basically. They say they got overloaded, but we'll see. Do we see something similar? I don't know. All I can tell you is that in this particular chart, it is very gnarly, and we are still yet to see Uranus in conjunction to, to the sun. By the way, the sun at 26, 27 degrees, the sun is conjunct Algol, which is one of the more gnarly stars in astrology. It deals with losing one's head. It deals with beheadings, but it also can have direct, connections and correlations to intoxication, issues psychologically, demonic possession, suicide, hanging, beheadings, obviously some nasty, gnarly things. But I look at this and I'm like, are we going to see like a 1920, moment? Like when we had the big crash that we had in the 20s? It's 29, right? Yeah. So I look at that and I'm like, ooh, I think that if there's one bit of advice I can give you is, I don't think anybody can time the bottom. It's not possible. But I think that looking at this, there is definitely more that's going to be breaking down. And I would be incredibly careful, because I think we're going to see some people that are experiencing some radical swings and radical losses that they just could not even fathom looking at this. Mercury conjunct, the sun, it basically means, it could be a turning of events, but likely it's not going to go the way people think it's going to go. And this is the day of the Jupiter-Saturn square, which is a market killer. That whole week of the 19th is particularly difficult. And sometimes we see that, depending on what you're looking at, if you're looking at, stocks or crypto, sometimes, full moons can be a period where things are really kind of growing, but I just don't know how that's possible. So we'll see the square. It'll take a couple of days still before Uranus is conjunct the sun, but it will be conjunct by about a degree. So it has still yet to hit. So when it comes back, next year, it'll eventually hit it. But this is what I was looking at. When the moon is in Scorpio, when it's opposing and it's squaring, so it looks like this is going to be around the 12th. This is when we start to see like the potential buildup of like what could happen or like what's coming. And this reminds me of another time period I'm going to show you guys in just a second. So that looks particularly gnarly. The Mercury retrograde is going to continue to keep squaring Uranus. So we're going to see another square with that full moon. And then when Mercury goes direct and it comes back and it squares Uranus again, we're going to see another one that's going to be on September 7th. So I don't think we're out of this yet. All right. And also one other thing, transit Saturn's in opposition. I keep giving you guys more. Transit Saturn is in opposition to Mars in the second house. And while Venus and Mars are in conjunction, there is an opposition to Saturn. I think that it's pretty obvious that, the Mars in the second house has this kind of like buy, we keep buying, we keep buying. And I think Saturn with the opposition is like people are at a point where, they may have literally run out of the ability to keep buying anything. And now they're at a point where they're like, if I sell, I'm going to lose everything. So people are trying to determine what they're going to do. All right. So let me show you one other chart. I want to show you the United States chart. And I know not all of you guys live in the United States, so I understand. This full moon, it doesn't look like much on the outside, but there's a lot of other things going on because this is going to be the lunar return for the United States. So it's going to set the stage for the next month in the United States. Obviously, we're going to be having the Democratic National Convention, so that's going to be happening. So that'll be taking place like that whole week, and that in itself makes me feel like there's curveballs coming from that. We may not actually see that everybody agrees in terms of what direction they go, or there may be some choice or kind of elected person that they're going to run or try to run for VP. Anyway, so we'll get to that in a second. But this full moon is going to be the lunar return. So the United States has 27-degree Aquarius moon. And if you see this, we're about to have our Mars return in the United States in the 7th house, which can represent some kind of heating up or action revolving around relationships or partnerships to other people, other countries, right? Or, dealing with some kind of unexpected conflict, or it could be about some, hidden enemy that's like now, kind of coming into foresight in the 7th house. And we are also getting ready to have Jupiter come into conjunction with our Mars as well. Jupiter will actually retrograde over our Mars. That's where it's going to retrograde. The Jupiter-Mars square is really kind of showing where it's becoming difficult when it comes to communication and relationships with other people. Saturn is retrograde in the whole sign 4th house of the Sibley chart. And yeah, I think it's making Americans feel even more kind of like isolated personally. At the time of the full moon, we're going to see the Cazimi taking place in Leo in the 9th house. So it can be about significant news revolving around foreign leaders, relationships with foreigners. It can be big, shocking statements revolving around the courts or court decisions, higher court specifically, or the 9th house. And obviously the conjunction with the sun is going to be that Cazimi. So some kind of news is becoming like visible. All right, so like I said, it doesn't seem like much, but you know, this is happening right on top of the United States Lilith. So it can be representing where there is this energy, or the sun and Mercury are conjunct there. There is this energy that is raw and unfiltered and extremely arrogant, especially with Lilith in Leo. It can be very kind of boastful and like almost like too overly confident. The full moon is going to be obviously not just conjunct the natal moon, but it's also conjunct Pallas Athena, which is not just about war, but it's also wisdom. Pallas is about being able to recognize and pick up on patterns, being able to see patterns. So it is possible that, you know, there could be highlighting these particular conjunctions, you know, that we have, especially the moon Pallas conjunction, where there's going to be lots of media talking about like, oh, well, you know, what direction are we going in with this or with that? And it can be with investments and finances because the moon rules the 8th house. It can be about what direction we're going in when it comes to, you know, potential conflict with other people, because I do think that that's coming. I've been saying that for some time. It's hard to say, but when I looked at this, I was like, well, I have to look at the lunar return and see what's going on with the lunar return. So check this out. So you guys see this, the natal chart, right? So this is 12 degrees rising. Look at the lunar return. Sagittarius rising. Okay, so not much changes. We've got Mars and Jupiter in the 7th, which we kind of natally have Mars there anyway. We've got the moon in the 3rd, Saturn transiting the 4th. I mean, it's like these are the same transits we're seeing in the chart. So the lunar return obviously is for Philadelphia because this is where we have the Sibley chart from. You can read it and kind of get an idea of like what's happening in the next month, right? So obviously Jupiter is the ruler of this chart. It's at a 1, so it basically means that, you know, things are going to be moving very quickly. It's going to be a very quick-paced month, and it can be about actions and reactions. It's this energy of Mars, and it's ruled by Jupiter. So Jupiter is in the 7th house. So it's saying that there is an emphasis in this next month in the, you know, United States of America revolving around relationships with other people. Now, point blank, 7th house could be allies, it could be partners, but it could also be like open enemies, people that will attack you head on. Like I see the 7th house not just as marriage and relationships, it's also like a boxing ring, or, you know, going and sitting in a court case and having to kind of go back and forth and defend yourself. So Jupiter being there means that there is more emphasis in being around, connecting, communicating, dealing with, it could be laws, Jupiter's laws, communications, Gemini, you know, some kind of leadership issues. 17 degrees deals with leaders, and it's in conjunction to Mars. So it's basically saying there's going to be some combative energy when it comes to some of our relations with people outside of the United States. Could it be the media? Because media is Gemini, right? So news, radio, TV, we'll see. And obviously this is huge because this is a part of the square to Saturn. I posted about this on X, but I'll just say this very simply. This happens right before the full moon, right? So, you know, just literally moments before. At the top part of the chart, we have Venus, which is obviously debilitated in Virgo. And Venus, it can be a woman. It can be about, you know, women's rights issues, women's health matters, things revolving also around just healthcare in general. And Venus is in opposition to Saturn, which is pretty, I mean, they're both bang on, you know, with the angles. Saturn rules money, resources, possessions. The opposition to Venus is bringing up the 6th house, and that becomes very public, right? So it could mean that, you know, once again, like I said, shortages, issues with pharmaceuticals, medication, health aid, hospital-related matters. It could also mean that there is some kind of like health-related issue that kind of comes up, and like a, you know, a woman who's like a prominent figure who's being seen is being challenged and maybe not meeting the needs of, the country, and, possibly with Venus square Jupiter and Mars, somebody being under some very harsh criticism or kind of like attacks revolving around her status, her capabilities, her leadership. I don't know who it's going to be. I'm not even going to speculate because I don't know who it's going to be, but it's about some significant change going on with resources, health, and women, or one particular woman who's going to be in the spotlight. The fact that this is happening right around the time of the, DNC makes me seriously question, what's going to happen with the future of that particular party. Is everybody going to be unified behind one particular candidate? Certainly a, full moon in square to Uranus does make me feel like not everybody is going to get along, and not everybody is going to have the same perspective or the same values or the same kind of, viewpoints. The moon is about being detached and kind of watching, what happens. And certainly, a Mercury cazimi in Leo could be about a change in direction with leadership. That could happen. In any scenario. It doesn't even have to just be like political. We could see that kind of across the board with, big CEOs, or that could be happening with, people in your own company that you potentially work for. So it's not limited to just this. But this is one heck of a lunar return, I will say that. And it definitely indicates that the focal point for the next, month or so is going to be definitely, dealing with something coming from all sides. Mars and Jupiter, I feel like with the squares to Saturn, could be about dealing with attacks on American soil from multiple fronts. And Gemini is systems, so it could be things related to cyber stuff. It could be things relating to trains, to subways, to buses. This could also be things that are in the air that are impacting us, or the airwaves, right? So it could be something that's kind of like more energy directed. So hopefully that's not the case. We'll see. I'm hoping that more of like the retrograde action that's happening in the 9th is more about some major kind of, court decision or something that's being overturned, or something that, the American public is becoming aware of. And certainly they may become very outraged by this. I'd be watching Trump, because this cazimi is going to be right on his ascendant. So there's definitely going to be some kind of news revolving around Trump, I would assume, with this particular transit. Just knowing his astrology, having, Jupiter and Mars kind of going into his whole sign 10th house, it's going to be a very active and a very dynamic time. But Trump is, also in a 12th house year. So he is going to be seeing, Mercury and planets are going to be retrograding into his 12th house. So it can be a time that can be a little bit more quiet and reflective. So we might see some changes with leaderships in that capacity potentially. But his chart's also getting like lit up like a Christmas tree. It's continuing some of those squares that we've seen since Mars and Uranus came into conjunction, like they did a couple of weeks ago. So that even that Mercury retrograde is kind of re-triggering some of that particular conjunction. All of this astrology, it really reminds me of the summer of 2022. If you guys are familiar with that time. So let me make this Aries rising chart really quick. If you guys think back to what was kind of happening in August of 2022, we had some very similar, Uranus, some very similar Uranus, Aquarius, Leo stuff that was happening. Let me show you really quick. So if we look at this time, this is when Saturn was in Aquarius. So it was a different energy, but it was similar. Right around mid-August of 2022, we had the sun going through Leo. It was in opposition to Saturn. So Saturn's not there, but the moon's going to be there. And it was squaring Uranus. Okay, and the node was there as well. So the end of July into the beginning of August was crazy. There was a lot of stuff that happened that year. Obviously, Taurus is a financial sign. It rules banks and possessions. Leo is just more about gambling, taking chances. It can also be about self-employment. And Aquarius can represent the money that we make from work, but it can also represent bigger companies and things like that. So these are financial signs. I did a little bit of research. I looked back on what was actually going on when we were seeing some of these oppositions and squares. So apparently we did see in July that, let's see, so the U.S. Consumer Price Index rose 8.5 year over year in July. So it was it was down from 9.1 in June, indicating that inflation was cooling off, okay? Then we saw that the Federal Reserve raised interest rates by 0.75% points for the second consecutive meeting, and this was to combat high inflation. We were starting to see lots of issues with inflation, obviously, you know, post-COVID and everything else, but still, we were starting to see those issues. I think that was a lot of like the North Node Mars. We were starting to see that kind of like rise, the price of goods and all that stuff. So they raised interest rates. Then, supposedly in July and August, the U.S. economy added about 500,000 jobs, which people were surprised by because it indicated there was a strong labor market. Whether or not those numbers are true, that's neither here nor there. I don't know. I can't tell you. Then we saw the U.S. dollar index reached a 20-year high against a basket of currencies driven by expectations of aggressive rate hikes from the Federal Reserve. Some conflicting stuff here. U.S. Treasury Department offered a series of measures to address rising costs of living, including extending the pause of student loan payments and providing additional assistance to low-income families. The European Central Bank raised interest rates for the first time in 11 years that summer, from 0.5% to 0%, and from negative 0.5% to 0%, and signaled a further rate hike to combat inflation. Then we saw the Bank of England raise interest rates by 0.5%, so it went to 1.75%. The highest level since 2008, and warned that the UK is likely to enter a recession that year. The Chinese economy expanded year over year, and we have seen that it looked like it expanded 0.4% year over year in the second quarter. So it missed expectations basically, and it indicated that this was an impact of like COVID and lockdowns on their economy. And the International Monetary Fund downgraded its global economic growth forecast for 2022 to 3.2%, citing the war in Ukraine, high inflation, and COVID pandemic. So like, what does this all mean? Like, why am I bringing this up? Because a lot of the same stuff is still happening. A lot of the same issues with, you know, the Fed is talking about lowering interest rates. Personally, I don't know if that's going to help. We'll see. I personally just can't see the incentive. That's even if lower interest rates come down, I don't feel like people have the money to be borrowing. That's just from my perspective. I don't know. Everybody's different. But I'm seeing a lot of these same squares, and I think it's really going to come down to the destabilizing effects of Uranus and the fact that when there is just sudden sporadic printing of money and you know, flooding the markets with money, and also like doing everything possible to kind of keep things cool, it still inevitably blows up because the system is not working. So, you know, what we're seeing now is that all of this stuff is kind of coming up because we're supposed to be seeing the system change, right? So this is that moment where it's like, oh, is the system actually going to be changing? Probably. That's probably what we're going to be seeing. I think this is the beginning of the end in that sense, that we're probably getting ready to have no other choice but to move into what may be another system, right? All right. So I know lots of crazy stuff. I know it's some heavy stuff. Like I said, there are some positive things that are in this, but this is probably, for me, when I was looking at 2024, I was like, this is one of the wilder moons that we're going to see. If you guys thought that the Pluto Capricorn moon was insane, this one, I think this one's crazier than the 29-degree Capricorn moon, personally. I think this is much more challenging. To me, I think this is going to kind of feel like an eclipse. And we aren't even in eclipse season yet, so we'll see. I want to talk to you guys about how this is going to be impacting you, not just how it's impacting the world. I'm going to take you through the 12 rising signs. I would like to give you some insight, try to give you guys some pointers and some help in how to navigate this particular full moon. Keep in mind that Mercury is still retrograde, so things are still unfolding. Mercury is going to come back over this 26 degrees. So something in regards to this full moon is still kind of getting worked out clear until the beginning of September. So it might take a little time to see some of these results, kind of unfold. Uranus as well, it's going to turn retrograde soon. And when it does, it's still squaring, this particular degree. So as it's kind of going in and out of that 27 degrees, we're feeling the effects of this. And if you guys fast forward and you look at what's going on in the fall, we've got a full moon that's going to be happening in Taurus conjunct Uranus. So these Uranian themes, they're not going to change. Stay cool, stay calm, stay collected, be prepared. And let's see how this is impacting the 12 rising signs. All right, so this is going to be for Aries and Aries rising. What's going on, Aries? I hope you're doing well. Let's talk a little bit about this buck wild full moon in Aquarius. All right, so you got the full moon happening in your natal 11th house. All right, so this full moon can bring unexpected changes to your social circle or your kind of your networks, your humanitarian interests, maybe even your goals. This could potentially be a moment of one of your goals unfolding, but likely in a way that you never imagined. You may feel a strong urge to break free from the status quo and assert your independence in some way. To navigate this energy, stay open to exploring your social circle and be willing to adapt to changes in your needs or in your interests. Now here's the curveball, Aries. The curveball is Uranus is squaring from your second house, which means something may be changing about your goals when it comes to your resources or your finances. Maybe it comes through an experience or an interaction you have with a friend or a group of people that makes you kind of shift your perspective when it comes to money. 2, you need to be mindful of the Venus-Saturn opposition. Venus is going through your 6th house of health, habits, and routines. So it's really important to stay on top of your everyday habits and your health, not to be overdoing it, but also to make sure that you're staying on task and taking care of business and doing everything that is necessary. You know, it's possible that there may be an accountant that comes in to help you. You might start working with somebody who can kind of help you get on a budget. This could also be about making some significant shifts when it comes to your health and your dietary regimen as well. And there can be some sticky stuff that can kind of come up with like coworkers. So be mindful of that with Venus in opposition to Saturn. At the time of this full moon, Mars, your ruler, is challenged. It's conjunct Jupiter, so you're going to feel like you want to speak out and you want to say something unexpectedly. And I would say think everything through before you say something. Because even though this is going to make you really impatient to want to share some kind of information, the square to Saturn means that you're going to have to know when to say something and when to kind of bite your lip, right? Anyway, I hope that's helpful for you, Aries. Let me know what happens. The card that I get is the 7 of Swords. I think for me, I'll read you what the card says, but for me, the 7 of Swords is matters of trust. So this can be about betrayal, deception, getting away with something, theft, dishonesty, sneakiness, cunning, scheming, or strategy. That's what it says. But this could be like, did you overlook something that you probably shouldn't have overlooked, right? And it can mean that it can be with a friendship, it can be with a relationship, it can be with somebody in your life. And this might be that moment with like the Sun-Mercury conjunction in your 5th house that you're speaking out against something that you're like, that's not right, or that's not fair, or, like that's not okay. And with Venus in opposition to Saturn, it may impact some kind of a relationship of some sort because Venus represents your 7th house, right? So you might be kind of feeling like you need to kind of say something, or you have a feeling and you want to speak up about it. Let me know what happens. Good luck. All right, we've got Taurus and Taurus rising. You're going to be experiencing this full moon in the sign of Aquarius in your natal 10th house. Those of you guys who are the later degree rising, so 26, 27, 28, you guys are going to feel this the most, okay? So you've got a full moon taking place in your 10th house. Basically, this is going to be very active for you because it's in an angular house, but also because it's squaring Uranus in your sign. So when I think about this kind of taking place, I think about the full moon and it's bringing some kind of sudden change to your career and your public image. You may feel a strong urge to break free from the status quo and assert your independence. And I think to best navigate this energy, stay open to exploring your career options and be willing to adapt to changes in your work world. So full moons in the 10th house, big job changes, you're kind of promoting something, you give a presentation, there's more visibility, maybe you find out you got the job, maybe there's a change going on with your responsibility in the world. So if you don't work, it could be that your, responsibilities in some way are changing, or your status, in life is changing in some way, shape, or form. The fact that this is going to square Uranus, for the curveball, you are the curveball. You are. So you're being pulled in both directions between what's going on at work and what's going on at home, because the Sun and Mercury are at home. And Uranus is squaring this, which means you are feeling the tension, your body is feeling the tension. There's something that you're feeling like, I just need to make this shift. I need to kind of break free. I think what is challenging about this is that Venus is your chart ruler. And while Venus is lovely in the 5th house and is great for creativity and romance and dating and kind of children, it's in opposition to Saturn. So there is this feeling that you almost like need to lean more into your pleasure, your hobbies, your relationships, your kids, what you create. And there is this feeling of being like, no, because it trines your sun, moon, or rising. I need to do what's best for me. And it may mean that I need to separate myself from an old goal or, being so social or, connecting with a certain friend, right? Like that can kind of come up for you. While the full moon, I think, can be wonderful for big changes in your career, big breakthroughs in your career. Certainly it's making some nice aspects to your money house. I think that it almost seems as if like this is that moment where if you've been waiting to say, okay, I'm going my own way, or I'm going to launch my own business, or I'm finally, I'm just going to be myself. I don't care what my boss thinks anymore, or like what other people think. This may be that moment where that finally just kind of, expands very suddenly, right? So you are the curveball, Taurus. The card that I get is Justice. Okay. So justice is justice, fairness, balance, universal law, karma, cause and effect, truth being revealed, legal truth, accountability, and this can be about other people. It's interesting that Mars rules your 7th house, which is a very kind of like Justice Libra energy, and it's the focal point of the square. And it almost seems like, maybe part of this is like a huge shift or a breaking point that, really comes down to finances and what's most important and what's going to make you happiest. And maybe that's part of this, is that you're kind of weighing your options and trying to decide, do I take this job or do I not? Do I keep doing this? Do I make a change? And really trying to find the best balance that works for you, which is really great because the full moon is definitely it's going to have you in your feelings a little bit. So it's just important to breathe as you go through it and try not to be reactive. Okay. Good luck, my Tauruses. Let me know what happens. We've got Gemini and Gemini rising. You'll be experiencing a full moon in Aquarius in your natal 9th house. This is also a fellow sister air sign, so it will be trining your sun, moon, or rising in some capacity, most likely, and you've got some support from Mars and Jupiter in your sign. For you, Gemini, this basically is going to be a full moon that is highlighting your 9th house themes. So this is all about unexpected changes relating to higher education, travel, or personal growth. You may feel a strong urge to break free from the status quo and assert your own independence, especially when it comes to your beliefs, travel, or education. To best navigate this, stay open to exploring your personal growth and be willing to adapt to changes when it comes to your travel plans or your belief system. Now, the full moon, obviously, in the 9th house could be things like going on a trip, graduating, shifting something revolving around your beliefs. It could be taking on a new teacher or a new mentor, legal matters, publishing matters. But it's going to square Uranus. And, when you have planets in the 3rd house of short distance travel, documents, communication, and learning, and then a full moon in the 9th house, it looks like there could be some unexpected change of plans when it comes to a trip, education, or something that you're learning. It can come out of left field, especially with Uranus in the 12th house. I think about how you have Mars and Jupiter in your sign, and, there are some squares to Saturn, so you're having to kind of pace yourself a little bit, learning to take your time and not rush through things. Maybe it's about doing work first, traveling second. I also think about the Cazimi that's taking place, and it's trying to kind of bring your awareness to something 3rd house related. Managing or maintaining the car, fixing the car before you go on the trip, making sure you have the documents before you, go on into your counselor's office, making sure that you have the travel plans organized properly before you, kind of hit buy on the tickets. That kind of stuff can be kind of coming up, and it looks like whatever is kind of coming is going to kind of come out of left field. So a little bit more turbulent for people who are going to be traveling. I like the fact that Mercury is conjunct the sun. I just feel like with the opposition to the moon, it may bring up a change of plans that has some kind of financial implication of sorts. The card that I got for you is the 10 of Swords. Difficult cards. So the 10 of Swords is basically about potential endings. This can also be about, kind of feeling like you've been, stabbed in the back, or potentially going through some kind of crisis or dealing with wounds. This is also about, feeling exhausted and that it's time to kind of rest and recuperate. The fact that Uranus is the focal point of the square, I really feel like that might be a day where you're like, I need to turn my phone off. Like, I need to go and be in nature. Like, I'm feeling exhausted. I don't want to keep dealing with this stuff. It can also be a time where there is some unexpected maybe conversation that you're having with like a friend or a neighbor or a sibling that can kind of set you off a little bit. That's possible as well. You could just be feeling a little mentally overwhelmed. It could be about a conversation that kind of gives you some kind of like awareness to something you didn't realize before. And the results of that conversation can be kind of like startling. That's kind of how I interpret that. Be mindful that Venus in your 4th house is having you focus what's going on with home and family, and the opposition to Saturn makes you feel like you're being pulled in 2 different directions, and like you can only be so many places at once. And so there can be, family things going on or focus on home and kind of making home a little bit safer or more kind of comfortable, and maybe managing domestic things while you're still focusing on what's going on with work and career, okay? So don't overdo it, my Geminis. Good luck. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You guys will be experiencing a full moon in Aquarius in your natal 8th house. This is very financial for you, Cancer, because it's highlighting your 2nd and your 8th house axis. So for you, having this full moon that's going to be taking place in your 8th house brings unexpected changes to financial resources and intimacy or personal transformations. You may feel a strong urge to break free from the past and to assert your independence in some way. And I think to best navigate this energy, it's about staying open, especially when it comes to, talking about joint resources or being willing to adopt new changes when it comes to your investment strategy, changes when it comes to your partner's money. It can be about healing things psychologically and kind of getting to the kind of core issues that might be a little bit more sensitive, right? This is a sign that in conjuncts or quincunxes you. Secrets can kind of come out with full moons in the 8th house. This is also about money owed. So this can be about having to pay a bill off, but this can be about money that's coming in that's owed to you. The challenge of this is the fact that obviously there is a square to Uranus and you're ruled by the moon. So when the moon squares Uranus, it means that there is some shift that's going on either with your goals, your financial goals, or with some of your friendships, and how that's actually impacting your financial situation. Obviously, you've got the Sun and Mercury going retrograde, so there can be some loose ends that you're kind of tying up financially or some things that are kind of coming back around that you kind of need to deal with, some rearrangement that's going on with your finances or a recent change in your financial situation. If you're working with friends or for friends, this can definitely kind of have an impact because of the squares, obviously, to Uranus and then the moon to Uranus as well. What you're wanting to kind of watch for, I think, is that, sudden change of goals that can come through the 11th house, sudden change of friendships that, could come in that could actually positively benefit and kind of help your situation. So you may have friends in high places during this time. You want to be mindful that Venus is moving through your 3rd house of communication, neighbors, vehicles, and learning, and it's in opposition to Saturn. So it does mean that it might be a conversation you're having with like a sibling or like a female friend or somebody who's further away that's like talking about wanting to connect with you or like wanting to see you in some capacity, or a relationship that could be at a distance as well that's kind of taking place at this time. The card that I got for you is the Knight of Pentacles. So this is a good card because this is about financial messages. This is about being practical, realistic, stoic, slow and steady, especially when it comes to finances, commitments, being hardworking, grounded, pragmatic, conservative, okay? This can be a message that's coming involving money though. This can also be about Virgos or Capricorns or Tauruses that come in to help you during this particular time. So I'd be on the lookout for like messages that can be kind of coming in involving money or resources or a renegotiation of that as well. Especially with Mercury squaring Uranus, your goals revolving around changes and your values are kind of shifting and maybe you're realizing that you need more, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you, Cancer. We have Leo and Leo rising. You guys will be experiencing a full moon in Aquarius in your natal 7th house. This is your house of relationships. This is also your opposite sign. So a full moon in your 7th house can bring sudden changes to relationships, partnerships, or your contracts. You may feel a strong urge to break free from the status quo of relationships or assert your independence in some way. To best navigate this, really it's about staying open, potentially exploring relationship opportunities, and be willing to adapt to new changes in your relationships or partnerships. A full moon in the 7th house, if a relationship has already been on the rocks, it will really bring that to the forefront, right? Usually a 7th house full moon is about things going on with other people, not with you. So this could be friends, right, Aquarius? This could be your marketplace. Maybe you're launching something, you're bringing in clients. It could represent a meeting with a counselor or a therapist. And this particular full moon is in opposition to Mercury retrograde in your sign. So you are already reworking and rethinking. Who am I outside of relationships to other people? How do I want to change what I look like? How do I want to change in relationships? How can I rethink or rework something about how I'm selling something or how I'm putting something out there? Yes, there can be miscommunications with partners. That can happen. But likely it's happening because of some stress that's going on because of changes with relationship status or some kind of pressure at work, some changing circumstance that's going on in your kind of, your career, because Uranus is the focal point. So it does mean that maybe you're feeling like your career is kind of like teetering and, you're on the brink of making a change and you're not sure if you want to. And then you kind of, have some feedback or support maybe that comes from your partner or from a mentor or from a friend that says, yeah, do it. It can also be a big time where this is about changes in business partnerships. This can be about changes also in, how you're, basically presenting yourself to the world. So if you don't work, it's going to be more relationship oriented. It's going to be more about how, you might go from, seeing each other to being official, and that's the dramatic change. Or you might go from being like, okay, you know what, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And then kind of publicly shifting more into identifying as being kind of single and no longer being a part of a union. That can happen here as well. I think about how Venus is opposing Saturn. To me, this seems very financial. Venus is in your 2nd house of money, and Saturn is in your 8th house of joint people's assets and resources. So some of the differences that can kind of come up in relationships or partnerships or with clients can be over financial matters. So I would say really it's about the give and take, and whether that's with you and a romantic partner or you and a business partner, are you getting enough? Is somebody else contributing enough? And whether that's enough time, emotions, resources, what have you, that's really what I think that you're going to be asking yourself during this particular full moon. I'm going to say the same thing to you that I said to, generally just all the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, and Scorpio. This is a trying full moon, okay, because of some of the squares. And for you, with the Sun and Mercury in your 1st house, I'm not going to say it's all about you, because a full moon does kind of show us what's going on with other people. Other people's reactions and behaviors may show you everything you need to know and make it easier to kind of expedite the process of being like, do I want to work with or be with this person? So observe what's going on with other people, because I think that that's really important. Okay. All right. And the fact that Mercury's in your 1st house, there's a huge focus on your resources, and because it's opposing the moon, likely, financial matters can put some kind of stress on relationships. The card that we get is Temperance, which is about patience, healing, balance, right? Waiting, which I think is important, not to kind of react to this moon, because other people might be kind of bouncing off the walls. So this is about balance, harmony, healing, patience, self-control, moderation, purpose, peace, calm, tranquility, and serenity. So if you can't get this from other people during this full moon, then you're like getting it for yourself. You're like, okay, I'm going to take a step back, right? Don't add fuel to the fire. I know you guys love to do that. You're good at that, but don't do that, because that's going to create a bigger problem. Focus on balance and maybe taking a step back and getting perspective while Mercury is retrograde in your sign. Okay. Good luck. Let me know how that goes. We have Virgo and Virgo rising. You guys will be experiencing a full moon in Aquarius in your natal 6th house. This house deals with health and habits, routines, and coworkers, where you're working. So a full moon here can bring changes to your health, your work, or your daily routines. Some of you guys will start a job. Some of you guys will end a job. Some of you guys are going to be getting health results, or you're going to be starting to see results of making changes in your health and your habits. I think this is about breaking free from the status quo. I think this is about making changes in your schedule, maybe having to change, your schedule in some way if you're needing to travel or if you're wanting to go back to school. Maybe you're shifting your beliefs revolving around service and work, right? Because the full moon is square Uranus in your 9th house. That is the curveball. And I think that this is about, trying to adapt maybe to changes in your everyday routine because you're making some pretty significant shifts revolving around either traveling, your beliefs, or education in some way. This is happening during a Mercury cazimi, so that tells me, because you're ruled by Mercury, that you really need time alone in reflection, in meditation, in a dream space, in a spa, in a healing center, like something where you're going to have some realization about your health and your habits. And you might be learning like meditation, breath work, some kind of wellness practice, or practicing that during this time, because the 12th house can be the house of healing. What's interesting is that the 9th house can represent teachers or mentors. So there could be like a new health coach or somebody who comes in to help you at this time. And Venus is in your 1st house of self and body and health, and it's a great transit for you. However, it does oppose Saturn in your 7th house, which seems to kind of signify that you're like, I'm putting myself first, or I'm taking space from someone, or from a relationship, or from a partnership, or I'm taking space maybe from a younger person or a child, because Saturn rules your 5th. Maybe you're realizing that you are just needing to put yourself first. And when you do that, then, relationship stuff can become easier, or it can become more clear. Obviously, lots of intense energies with squares to Jupiter, Mars, and in opposition to Saturn. So with Jupiter and Mars in your 10th house, it's very obvious you're either juggling more than one job, or you're very busy at work, or there maybe is some significant change that's happening at work, or a transformation to your purpose, your job, your status, your career. And it's really putting the pressure on you, to kind of like really show up in a very different way in relationships, but also to yourself, right? So this might be about resting, recuperating, and healing. And a full moon in the 6th house, you have to watch for health-related matters, because that can come up. The card that you get is the 9 of Cups. Great card. This is about wish fulfillment. Okay, this is about, basically feeling content, satisfied, emotional richness, life abundance, success, achievements. This is great. So it can be about getting a job. It can be about getting a raise. It can be about switching departments or offices. Maybe that's because of the trine that's happening to Jupiter and Mars. That's part of it. But I'm wondering with the Sun and Mercury, if it's like you get an offer, or you're getting ready to make a change, and you're like, I really know what I want, but like, do you sit on it and think about it a little bit before you make that move? Mindfulness and meditation is really powerful for you during this full moon. So I recommend doing that, especially if you're wanting to have a major change with your health or your habits or your work. Good luck. We have Libra and Libra rising. You guys will be experiencing a full moon in Aquarius in your natal 5th house. For you, Libra, this isn't a fellow air sign. So if you have any planets from about 26 to 28 degrees, it'll be trining your sun, moon, rising, or personal planet. So it's friendly with you, especially those Libras, because you're also going to receive a trine from Jupiter and Mars. So this does aid in things flowing, feeling very expansive, more communicative, a little bit more fun. So for you, my Libras and Libra risings, a full moon in your 5th house is really bringing opportunities for sudden change when it comes to your creativity, self-expression, or your love life. If you're single, somebody can just drop into your life very unexpectedly out of the blue. If you're dating somebody already, there can be huge shifts in the relationship with the person that you're with, or lots of surprises. And if you're already partnered, there's going to be an emphasis on creating more time for romance, creativity, and having fun. I think you're just going to feel a really strong urge to express your unique individuality and break free from the status quo. It's about, really exploring new creative avenues and being willing to adapt and make changes in your love life. There can be shocks and surprises revolving around children as well, because the 5th house rules children. Pregnancies can happen with this full moon, especially with a square to Uranus, which is your 5th house ruler. So likely it can be unexpected turn of events when it comes to children or dating or relationships. I think about, for you, Libra, how Venus is your chart ruler and it's in the 12th house. And when Venus is in the 12th house, you're more behind the scenes. So it can be about not wanting to be seen or kind of wanting to kind of be hidden, or maybe you're healing something, or you're traveling, you're just taking time away, or you're feeling a little bit more creative or like idealistic. And Venus opposes Saturn. So it means that for you to want to make some of these dreams or some of these ideas a reality, there is a need for you to really structure your day-to-day routine, your work, or your habits, especially within your home or emotionally. This is a time you also really want to watch your health, Libra, because there can be some health stuff that can come up here for you, which can kind of make you feel a little under the weather. And you've got this Cazimi taking place in your 11th house. So it can be about reconnections, meeting new people, expanding your social horizons, like kind of having a group of people to kind of like watch you do something, to put something out there. And what you're showing them can be like really dramatic, and it could be like really kind of unexpected and very different than the type of things that you would typically do. The card that I got for you is the Page of Wands. Okay, so this could be an Aries, a Leo, or a Sag. Page of Wands is about being adventurous. It's about excitement, fresh ideas, cleverness. This is about being energetic, fearless, discovery, young spirit, limitless potential, and being a bit of an extrovert. So perfect for the 5th house. I feel like this is about kind of like really putting on a show and showing people what you've got. I feel like this is great for launch of creative projects or other things that you want people to see. Maybe you're still kind of working out the kinks in some way, but this might be the time that you're kind of like taking some creative risks, and they may potentially pay off. Good luck. We've got Scorpio and Scorpio rising. You are going to be experiencing a full moon in Aquarius in your natal 4th house. My Scorpios, hold on to your shorts. This is going to be a really big one for you guys, especially if you have any personal planets around 26, 27, 28 degrees of Scorpio, because you are the missing piece to what will be a grand fixed cross. Okay? So the good news is the fixed cross is a lot easier to work with than the T-square. The T-square creates some trouble, but if you've got Scorpio energy, you can kind of help balance some of that stuff out. I feel like this is going to be rather loud, in my opinion. So for you guys, the 4th house, obviously a full moon here is about big unexpected changes with home, family, or your personal roots. This could be closing on a house, buying a house, finding out you're moving, big things going on with your parents, big emotional changes that can be happening for you. This is also about feeling a really strong urge to break free from the past and assert your independence in some way. It can be moving on from the past. It can be your independence when it comes to your home and your relationship to your family. I think really to navigate this, it's about staying open, and a lot of it might be about exploring your personal history and being willing to adapt to making changes in your home. Obviously, this is a full moon that is going to square Uranus. Okay, so these significant sudden changes or events are likely coming from relationships to other people. It could be your spouse, romantic partners. It could be, changes that, you're going through with relationship to relatives. It could also represent some kind of unexpected breakthrough, maybe that you have with like a therapist or a counselor of some kind that help you like realize some of the patterns maybe that you've had emotionally when it comes to your home and your family. I think about how Mars, your chart ruler, is in conjunction to Jupiter in your 8th house. So there is this kind of pushing forward into unknown places when it comes to changes with your finances, intimacy, vulnerability, spiritual healing. And it's bringing up a lot of financial stuff for you. And it is in a square with Saturn in your 5th house of creativity and self-expression, where you're having to work harder on those things or work harder with children. And it's also squaring Venus. So it seems like this is a big turning point when it comes to breakthroughs in being able to make money off of self-employment, creative projects. This is also big breakthroughs when it comes to matters of like insurance, inheritances, joint finances, stuff like that. And really it's about merger, coming together with another person and being open to kind of like be vulnerable and like make change, and not being afraid of having some kind of change in your status, which looks like that's getting ready to happen with the Mercury retrograde in your 10th. Getting pulled into different directions between the 10th house, which can be more about your status, your reputation, your career, what you're known for, versus some of the undercurrents of change in your personal life. And it's being brought forth by another person who's coming in to kind of help initiate some of those changes. Relationships can be rocky, and that can also make you take a step back from, something that's going on with work, or vice versa. You could be feeling like, relationship's really good, but I need to be pivoting and kind of focusing on what's going on with work, because you kind of get pulled in every different direction. So let me know how that plays out for you, Scorpio. I'm curious. I get the Seven of Wands, which is a great card. This is about standing your ground, not backing down. This is also about, kind of defending your position, your challenge. This is about perseverance and being able to protect your territory and continuing to kind of work through something. So this might mean that you're like, no, I'm not just going to, give up on my dream of being able to buy a house, or I'm not just going to, kind of throw in the towel with a family member or with my relationship. Like, this is about being like, I'm going to stay and make it work, which I think is very much the square, if you ask me, especially if you have Scorpio placements in the first house. It's going to be about being like, no, we have to learn how to integrate these things. We have to be able to do them all at the same time. So it looks like you're going to be brave and you're going to be bold and be able to do that. Just don't be surprised if this means that you're going to have to kind of make some sacrifices when it comes to something, right? Because I think the Venus-Saturn opposition, the Saturn-Mars square, it does look like there's going to be a little bit of a give and take here. Good luck. We've got Sag and Sag rising. You're going to be experiencing the full moon in Aquarius in your natal third house. For you, Sagittarius, the third house is all about communication. It can be about siblings. It can also be about traveling, learning, as well as vehicles. So when you have a full moon here, this can bring unexpected insights and revelations about your communication style, your neighborhood, maybe your vehicle, and how you learn. You may feel a strong urge to express your unique ideas and connect with your community. And I think to best navigate this, it's about really like changing something about your immediate environment, or changing something about the way that you kind of connect with other people. Maybe you do decide that you're ready to kind of like, implement some kind of new software or new app, or maybe you're deciding that you need to get like a new phone, or you need to get a new laptop or something in order to be able to kind of make things flow a little bit more smoothly. Full moons in the third house, I like for launching podcasts, websites, for, going back and making some tweaks to something on social media, for, getting ready to, complete a course of some kind, for putting an emphasis on communicating with like relatives. Now, this full moon is going to have a square to Uranus, and that means that likely some of the communication surprises is going to come from some kind of dramatic change that's happening in your day-to-day schedule. It could mean there's a power outage at work, right? Or your software goes down and you're like, great, now how am I supposed to, like pull up my work laptop? It could mean that there is some sudden change to your schedule, and it's because something is going on with your vehicle and, you're kind of late to an appointment, or you're late to work. It can be because of an unexpected change that's happening with your health, or an unexpected change that's happening even with a pet. So if you look at the ninth house where the Sun and Mercury are, and there's a cazimi, it looks like there might be a change in direction or a change in plans with traveling. Mercury rules your seventh house. So you might be like saying, I'm rethinking booking that trip, or maybe I'm needing to adjust the dates a little bit. There's something that's kind of conflicting with my schedule, or there's something that has kind of come up here. Obviously, Jupiter rules your chart. At the time of the full moon, we're going to see Jupiter conjunct Mars in the seventh house, where there's lots of action and kind of things heating up when it comes to relationships with other people. Mars is the fifth house of romance and creativity, and you are Jupiter. So those of you guys who are hot and heavy in a relationship, or you're just meeting someone, or you're just putting yourself out there, there's a lot of relationship energy here, a lot. However, it is in a square to Saturn, so it does mean that one of the challenges in being able to quickly kind of proceed forward in relationship with another person is obligations and responsibilities at home. If you notice, Venus is in opposition to Saturn, so there is this sense of being like, okay, I'm really working hard to get work done, put stuff out there, get as much done as possible, but I'm getting kind of pulled or sucked back into heavy emotions, home responsibility, taking care of a parent, some financial challenges. And it looks like a partner can kind of come in and they can kind of help break all of that up. That is helpful during this transit. But yeah, scheduling changes with courses, and be mindful of your health with that Uranus square, because that can definitely bring up some health stuff either for you or for a pet. The card that you get is the World, which is generally a pretty good card for travels. Those of you guys who are traveling, you have to let me know. This is about completion, integration, accomplishment, world travel, bigger picture, evolution, fulfillment, harmony, and a sense of belonging. This is a positive card. This is about kind of completing cycles. And so I think that maybe the Uranus square is basically saying you're ready to finally give up like old mental habits. It can be obsessively, worrying about something. It could be changes to your dietary habits with Uranus in your 6th house. It could be making, changements and adjustments to how you're kind of scheduling yourself. Maybe some kind of change in some kind of new app or some kind of like new gadget like makes this easier. So you are automating things at work, or maybe you have some kind of secondary stream of income, or you're selling something that, is kind of drop shipped or something that you can be hands off with. So it's kind of liberating you when it comes to your daily routine. Good luck, Sag. We've got Capricorn and Capricorn rising. You guys will be experiencing this full moon in Aquarius in your natal 2nd house. This is all about money and resources, self-esteem, security, all that fun stuff. So when you have a full moon here, there can sometimes be some major financial things that are kind of brewing. So big kind of conclusion or completion in regards to your personal values. There is a sense with an Aquarius full moon of wanting to break free from something. And this can be traditional structures and values when it comes to your finances. It can also mean that this is about exploring new ways of making money and adopting new changes when it comes to your financial situation. Now, this full moon is going to be squared by Uranus, which is in your 5th house, which can be about speculation, taking chances, investments, gambling, different markets, crypto markets, things like that can kind of come up, and you're thinking about taking a chance and making an investment to see if it pays off. But full moons in the 2nd house can also be about big payments of money coming in or payments being due. Now, there is a retrograde that's going on in your 8th house right now. So there's already a reorganizing of insurance or joint assets or investments or maybe an inheritance of sorts. So that's kind of getting worked out, and it does square Uranus. So be really mindful of like moving money back and forth, investing money or spending money or gambling money that you may not have, because something's still kind of getting worked out in your 8th house, which can be about joint assets or taxes, money owed. You do have, at the time of the full moon, Venus, which rules your career and status, and it also rules the 5th house of children and creativity in opposition to Saturn. So this is saying that likely there is a bit of like a back and forth going on, and you may feel like a job opportunity or a creative opportunity kind of almost feels like it's out of reach, right? And maybe there's like a job opportunity that's far away because Saturn is also squaring Jupiter and Mars. You might be feeling like, I want to take on a second job, or maybe I'm going to do meal delivery. I'm going to do Uber. This is very kind of like driving or writing, that could help me reach some of my financial goals, right? Or I'm taking on a second job. Something like that can kind of happen. So I think the Mars-Jupiter square to Saturn is good because it's providing you with like a new opportunity, but it might feel like you're juggling way more than you can juggle, right? Venus in opposition to Saturn does feel a little challenging, and I wonder if you guys are either going to have like a relationship at a distance that's kind of taking place here, or it could potentially be a job offer at a distance that comes through, and you're trying to figure out how to make it work with your everyday routine or your schedule, and if it's possible to be able to take both on, right? The card that I get for you is the Strength card, which is symbolic of Leo, by the way, your 8th house, where this is all getting kind of worked out. So this is about self-love, respect, unconditional love, courage, inner strength, perseverance, inner stillness, and compassion. All right. I really feel like this is about the Venus opposition, and that this is about being like, okay, knowing that I'm just being tested. It's going to be fine. I'm going to get through it. It's going to take a little bit of time, but good things are worth working for. I also feel like the Strength card is about exercising and showing strength in ways that may not necessarily be physical, so it's emotional. And with the moon in opposition to the sun and Mercury, I think it's just about how hard are you willing to kind of work to be able to kind of reach some of your goals, right? Hopefully that's helpful for you guys. All right, let's take this back really quick. There we go, for Pisces. All right, Aquarius, there we go. For Aquarius and Aquarius risings. All right, so this is your guys' full moon. I hope it's a good one for you. So we've got a full moon in Aquarius. If you're an Aquarius rising, this is going to be taking place in your natal first house of self. And this is about a big completion, transformation, realization, you know, in regards to you, your goals, your body, your appearance. So when you have this full moon in your first house, this is kind of wrapping up the intentions that you set 6 months for yourself. So you have to think back to February. It can bring changes to your identity or changes to your appearance. And I think that for a lot of you guys, it's going to have you kind of restless and kind of feeling like it's time to kind of keep things moving, or it's time to be more independent, or it's time to kind of like, you know, not feel like you're kind of cooped up or kind of stuck in the house. Definitely a really strong urge to break free from the status quo and express your unique individuality. I think this is also about just embracing changes that you have seen within yourself over the last 6 months. Now, full moon here squares Uranus, which is your modern day ruler. And so you have this really complex square between Uranus and the moon in your first house. So you can be very emotional, and squares to Mercury and Uranus in your 7th house, which means there can be a little bit of friction going on with like romantic partners, committed relationships, clients. It can also be your relationship with children or with kids, right, in your 7th house. And Uranus is the focal point. So you are kind of partially the person who is creating some kind of change. Like you may feel a little tense, or that you're kind of feeling boxed in. You're like, I just need out, but can create some friction with other people. And then the other way that I look at it is your traditional ruler, Saturn, in your 2nd house, where you're becoming more resourceful and more particular and like cautious about your resources and your spending. Saturn is in opposition to Venus, so it means that you're dealing with back and forth money related issues, possibly relating to joint assets, money relating to your home. It could be about mortgages. It could be about sales of, property and things like that, because Venus rules your 4th house, and it all squares Jupiter and Mars. So this could mean that there's just more tension at the time of the full moon in regards to relationship with other people because of extra or excess expenses pertaining to kids, or extra spending pertaining to hobbies, and like the impact that that's having on your relationship. Some of you guys might go, it's worth spending money taking my kid to the amusement park, and that's the Saturn, Jupiter, Mars square. Some of you guys might go, you know what, it's worth it, booking the weekend trip away and, maybe indulging a little bit with my partner, so we have time to kind of like really enjoy each other and like kind of have a break, so it doesn't have to be bad. But definitely there is a sense of overindulging, overdoing it, over partying, playing, something like that. And there's a lot heating up for those of you guys who are single, because you've got a retrograde in your 7th house where you're working out a relationship in some capacity. And that's all in aspect to Mars and Jupiter in your 5th house. I've seen a lot of like Aquarius and Aquarius risings that's like, I have one kid, do we really want to have another, or I'm dating one person, but I met somebody else, like, do I date both? There is like doubles coming up, or trying to juggle too much with that Mars and Jupiter in your 5th house. I would just say, it's your full moon. You're gonna do whatever's gonna be best for you. And I feel like what you want or what you need might be just a little bit of space and freedom. And, you might notice that there are other people that are kind of reacting to the fact that you're a little just more in your own lane. Mercury retrograde and the sun Mercury opposition to this moon in the 10th is definitely going to bring up a difference of opinion when it comes to managing 5th house things. Okay. And make sure that you're really cut and clear about money and finances and resources, because Saturn in your 2nd house could be like, no, I'm creating boundaries revolving around what I invest in or what I give away. And Venus in the 8th house could be asking for something. All right. The card that you get is the 6 of Wands, which is the card of victory. This is about success, public recognition, achievement, confidence, victory, award, triumph, praise, acclaim, pride, and reward. Okay, so this is a good card. I feel like it's about being victorious in all of these situations, being like, okay, I was challenged by other people, or I was put on the spot in regards to this situation with my family, or, you know, I've worked really hard for this moment. Now I'm getting like more recognition for what I've been working on, right? Mercury rules your fifth. It could be this moment where all eyes are on you, right? But I do feel like it does create some sense of breaking out of old ways, old emotional habits, old home habits, old family habits. And I'm excited to see what happens for you guys. I'm sure for a lot of you, it's going to be like a big transformation. So you have to let me know what happens. Good luck. And then finally, we have Pisces and Pisces rising. You guys will have a full moon in Aquarius in your natal 12th house. This is a house of mysticism, spirituality, healing, what is like a little bit more hidden and kind of behind the scenes. So it's not always as obvious and in your face as other full moons. For you guys, this can bring some changes to your sleep habits, for one. For two, it can also bring unexpected insights and revelations from your subconscious mind. So in meditation, in dreams, in getting a reading, you know, there can just be this really strong message that comes through for you. And I think it's really about being open and exploring your subconscious mind and being willing to make some changes revolving around like your beliefs. This could also be a time where you're feeling like more creative, more romantic, more spiritual, because the moon rules your fifth house. Now, obviously, you've got a Mercury retrograde taking place in your sixth house with the sun. There's an opposition here, so this tells me that you got to be mindful of your health and your habits, because sometimes a full moon in the 12th house manifests as I'm in bed, I'm under the weather, I'm sleeping, I'm in a hospital bed, obviously touch wood. But these things can happen, so I'm looking at it in aspect to like the Mercury retrograde in the fifth, where if you're overworked, if you don't have healthy habits, if you're not taking care of things, it can definitely lead to some of these 12th house themes, right? I also think about the square to Uranus, which is the curveball. And Uranus also rules your 12th house. So it can be, you know, due to mental emotional things, due to accidents involving driving, or anything in, you know, travel or transportation. You could be feeling anxious and need to be doing some breathing work, because the third house can be about lungs, or you need to do some journaling to kind of work through some of your anxiety if that's something you're feeling. Definitely you can have more intense feelings like that with a full moon in your 12th house. During the full moon, we're going to see Venus in your 7th house of relationships in opposition to Saturn. So it's possible that help is there, a relationship is there, somebody's trying to offer you some type of support, even if it's just, hey, I'll come over and help you tackle a home situation and, you know, organize your garage or put things away, or, you know, I'll bring you some soup if you're sick. But with Venus in opposition to Saturn, there is this sense of being like, I'm not really interested. Please don't come over. You know, don't call me, I'll call you, especially because Venus rules communication. It can represent a relationship at a distance. It can represent a sibling or a coworker or somebody who's calling and trying to help. But this Venus opposed Saturn square Jupiter and Mars is very interesting. It makes me feel like it's going to be a lot of having to communicate with either siblings or relatives, you know, or neighbors about, you know, some kind of home situation, and like trying to find a way to kind of keep the balance or kind of keep the peace and kind of mediate some of these changes that might be happening on the home front. Yeah, I would just say, like, don't be grouchy, right? People are going to want to help you. That's something that you want to know with Saturn in your first house. Like, be receptive of people who are coming in and trying to support. You may feel like there's lots of changes going on in the home front right now, where you're in the precipice of moving, or you're kind of in between spaces. And the full moon in the 12th house is like this feeling of like, okay, things are completing. I can feel that things are completing. Next month, okay, we're going to have a lunar eclipse in Pisces. So the next full moon will be in your sign. And that's going to be, obviously, if you're a Pisces rising, in your first house. And it's going to oppose some stuff that you're going to have in your 7th house. So I kind of feel like for some Pisces, there could be like a separation brewing of some kind, or like taking space from like a roommate, or taking space from like a family member and being like, I don't want to live here anymore. I'm going to live somewhere else. Or, you know, like, I don't know, I think I need my own space. And like this natural setup, I think, with the Mercury retrograde, to be rethinking or reworking work or your health or your habits in preparation to like really kind of make the break in some capacity, right? So hopefully that's helpful for you. Let's see what these cards say for you, my Pisces. Card that I get is the Three of Swords. Oof, there was a couple difficult cards here. So we've got the Three of Swords, which is, it can be heartbreak, right? It can be about being disappointed. It can be about loss and, you know, feeling like you're working through some kind of sorrow or trauma. In the 12th house, it is about completion. So it's kind of like, okay, this thing has to end. And when I think about it, it could be romantic, right? It could be finally moving on from something that's been kind of brewing for a little bit. And now you know that you're kind of working up the nerve to move on. You're finally healing something. That's the other way I could look at it. Childhood trauma, other issues, just, you know, previous broken hearts and things that you're still kind of moving on from. I think about how this squares Uranus, and I think what could be really helpful is just getting it all out on paper. You know, doing an exercise where you're doing some journaling or doing some breath work, or maybe kind of going for walks and like processing your emotions, especially because we feel kind of caged in when we have a full moon in the 12th house. And this is that natural conclusion and completion as we're getting ready to come into eclipse season in your sign next month, in the month of September. So this is preparation for that. And like just for everybody in general, guys, I mean, once we get to mid-August, we're already in this energy. So even though this full moon is very big in its own right, we're starting to feel the effects of the incoming eclipse. Anyway, that's the long and short of it. I hope that that was helpful for you guys. I know that it is long and I probably sound like Charlie from Always Sunny. So as always, I apologize. One day I'll get a real whiteboard where I can have some dry erase markers and get real crazy. But don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Please give me a thumbs up if you like this video. You can come back to this video and let me know how it plays out for you. I love to read those comments. Obviously, we do these a little bit ahead of time. And yeah, let me know what you guys think about this full moon happening on August 19th, 2024. This is going to be a full moon in Aquarius to remember. Make sure you're subscribed so you can check out the other videos that I'm going to have between now and then. I will catch you guys all back here on Thursday. Until next time, enjoy your week. Take care.